Hello everybody, my name is Zeke, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a follow-up to another video I made very recently where I basically took my favorite albums and I recommended books based on them. And in today's video, I'm kind of following up on that and kind of reversing it in a way because I'm going to be reading books on my TBR based on some of my favorite albums. Now, the first problem with this was that in that video, I talked about 10 albums and I am not going to read 10 books for one video because that's a lot and that will take me a long time and I'm not spending that much time on one video, but I am gonna choose 3 albums and 3 books, one for each album in this video, and I will read all of them, I'll talk about all of them, I'll explain why I chose them. Some of them will be for silly reasons, some of them will be for a little more thought-provoking and serious reasons. But I'll read them all, I'll talk about them, and we'll go from there. And maybe in the future, if this kind of goes well, I'll continue with the other albums that I talked about in that first video and make this kind of a longer series, depending on how it goes today. So the first album and book pairing I chose was Sprained Ankle by Julian Baker with In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And basically, the reason I chose this is Sprained Ankle is a very sad album about kind of going through a lot of different struggles like addiction, stuff with religious trauma, and it's also made by a queer person. And Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House is a memoir about some of the same issues. She's a queer woman who was in an abusive relationship. It also talks, I'm pretty sure, about religious trauma and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of pair these two together. And I am gonna read In the Dream House. And this one I think is the one that was most serious and that I can actually probably draw parallels between them. And the other 2 options are a little more silly and a little more just for fun and not as like thematically linked per se. Okay, the second pairing I've chosen is really, I think, gonna be obvious in a second. So that's Either Or by Elliott Smith with Either Or by Elif Batuman. And this is obviously because they have the same title. And Either Or, the book, is kind of a follow-up to the author's first book in this kind of, I think she's gonna be writing a 3rd book too, but the first book's called The Idiot and was really popular a few years ago. And Either Or came out last year, I want to say, and I just never got around to it. I read The Idiot last summer and I enjoyed it for a lot of reasons, but also I feel like I was just not in the right space to be reading it. And I was like, I thought the pacing was a little off for me at the time. It just wasn't something I really wanted to read at the time. And I feel like I really should have saved it for a time where I was more interested in reading a slower book. But I really liked the main character. I really liked kind of that voice and the writing. We follow a girl in college. She's very smart, she's very observant, but she's kind of going through all these weird things and she has a lot of just observations about the world around her and questions about the world around her. And it's a very unique kind of voice, as I said, and I really want to continue with that, and kind of now I think this is something I will appreciate more, and so I'm definitely excited to, I've been excited to read this book for quite a while, and this is the perfect opportunity because they have the same name, and I just thought that that was kind of funny, and it works as a companion piece, but thematically, basically nothing in common, but I'm just excited to read it. And so that's why I chose that book with this album. Then lastly, this isn't as kind of random and coincidental and silly as the last one, but it's still kind of a little bit made up, but I just thought it was kind of a fun way to relate them. This is Dragon New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You by Big Thief. This is a huge album, 20 songs. It really blends a lot of different genres. We flip from genre to genre between songs, and it really builds into kind of an interconnected album that really holds up as a strong like work of art on its own. And for that reason, I decided to pair it with 7 Empty Houses by Samantha Schweblin. This is a short story collection that takes place in like 7 different rooms or 7 different houses, as the title says, and they're all about different things, but they kind of build a tapestry of one singular piece of art. And so for that reason, it kind of related to like the genre shifting in this album. And so that's the book I'm going to be reading with this album. Those are the 3 albums and 3 books that I'm talking about today and that I'll be reading today. And I think I'm going to start with In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and I will let you know how that goes, and I'll check in soon. Okay, I basically just started In the Dream House. I'm only about like 30-ish pages in, but it's a very interesting book so far. Obviously, I haven't really read enough to form like really in-depth opinions on it, but as I said, it's a memoir, but it is very structurally unique and just writing-wise, just told in a very interesting way. It's told so far in second person, which is a really weird experience to read, but I think really suits kind of the narrative voice that the author uses. And also, all the chapter titles have names like The Dream House as blah blah blah, and then some sort of like quick little phrase, which is kind of, I don't know, just interesting, and some of them are witty and just something I haven't really seen before, especially in a memoir, to have this very unique kind of stylistic choice. And then also just the way that the author flips back and forth between these different sections. They are very short. Some of them are like half a page, some of them are like 3 pages, but so far they're all very short, and so far we're really building up this relationship that we know is gonna turn out bad, because she kind of switches between stories about the relationship and her life building up to the moment of the relationship. She flips between that and kind of reflecting on the relationship from the present day. And it's just a really interesting way to kind of read, flipping back and forth from these stories and the present reflection. And there's one section, it's not really a spoiler because it's near the beginning, where it's called like Dream House as time travel, and she's thinking, oh, if I time traveled back and told myself what I knew now, how would I react? And just examining that, and because of stuff like that, we know how this kind of ended up, but just seeing this relationship build and seeing the happy moments at first, I just think is going to be really interesting, especially comparing with the book as it goes on and as things turn bad. So far, really enjoying this, really excited to continue reading, and also kind of worried because I know it's probably going to be sad. But yeah, really good choice, really interesting book, something I've been wanting to read for a while, and really glad I could finally get to it. And I'm going to read a lot more, and I will update later on when I have more thoughts to share. Okay, I just finished In the Dream House, and it was everything I wanted, everything I expected, and more. The writing remained absolutely beautiful and heartbreaking, and it's very, as I said, it's a very experimental book, and I knew that going in, but just kind of the ways that she experiments with storytelling are really interesting. There are some like fairy tale references throughout. She frequently footnotes from this kind of book of motifs about fairy tales to kind of reference what's going on. She also has like little like fantastical stories woven in different sections, and it just makes it a really interesting reading experience, and they also all kind of contribute to the ideas she's talking about. She talks about abuse in the queer community, how hard it is to talk about that, how it's not talked about enough, and kind of the very specific nature of abuse in at least her relationship and just queer relationships in general. And so I really enjoyed this. It definitely got really sad, but the ending got happier, and she's just a really insightful writer. She had lots of things to say about everything that had happened, and also, as I said, she said it in a very interesting way, and I'm really, really glad I read this. I've been wanting to read it for a while, and this was the perfect opportunity to pick it up, and I'm giving it 5 stars because it was just really amazing. I think next I'm probably gonna pick up Either Or, just because I want to get to that, and I want to kind of see how that'll be, and that should be very, very different from this experience, obviously, but I'll get to that tomorrow, and I'll update once I'm a little bit into that. But this book was insane, incredible, and I would definitely recommend you read it. Even if you're skeptical, like, I don't read memoirs at all. I don't really enjoy them. This is like unlike anything I've ever read before, fiction or nonfiction, and you should read it. Like, no matter who you are, I would recommend this book. Look at trigger warnings before you do, because obviously, but really, really incredible writing, incredible everything, really. Remember how I said I was gonna read either or? Well, I'm actually reading 7 Empty Houses because I went to check out either or on the Libby app, and there is now a wait time. There was not a wait time when I looked last, but it shouldn't take too long just because I think there's like 45 available copies and I'm like 16th in line, so that's not a long wait at all. I should get it within the next few days, but for now I just can't read it until I get it, obviously. So I started 7 Empty Houses, and there's 7 short stories for 7 empty houses, obviously, and they all center around houses in different ways, and they are all very weird. So so far I've read the first 3 stories, and I'm just gonna go through each of them and kind of share my thoughts. They've all been pretty short so far. I think 6 out of 7 are like very short, and then there's one like really long one, which I think is the next one I'm gonna read. But these 3, the first one is like, they're all very weird. I'm gonna just be straight out. They don't have fully explained anything. The weirdness is really treated as like almost normal. I mean, obviously the characters, like when scary things happen or like weird things happen, they're like weirded out, but it just is told in such a straightforward way almost that it's like just treated as just a normal whatever. So the first story, we get kind of this weird thing that happens with like this mother and daughter, and this like mother who's like obsessed with like really nice houses, and there's some weird stuff going on with there. I'm not gonna go in depth with any of these because they're short stories, but just very weird mother-daughter relationship, and also just like really instability in the mother's mind, and like exploring that and what that kind of looks like in their lives, and like what they kind of do. And I know that makes no sense if you haven't read this, but just really weird, really interesting, and I think that was my favorite one so far. It ends on a really weird note, but it's just, I think the last paragraph of that was like, just the way it's all wrapped up, it's like, it's not satisfying, but it doesn't really like explain anything, but I feel like the language and the way that she ends stories are so just powerful in a way, and so that was my favorite one so far, and I think that had the best ending so far. Now the second one was probably the most like disturbing one. It's about like this ex-husband and ex-wife and their children, and the ex-husband's like parents, and just weird stuff going on in this like new house setting between the kids and the grandparents. Very disturbing, nothing is explained, very weird. I did not enjoy it at all, but I got what it was trying to do. And then the third story was like definitely the least explained, and I think probably my least favorite, just because I didn't really get the point. That's probably just me. But it's just this weird relationship between neighbors and like this family who's like lost a son, and their relationship with this family that still has their son. And I don't know, it kind of just ended abruptly, which I wasn't really sure about, but that's how it's going so far. I'm really enjoying it. I just love how strange and how different every single thing that she writes is. I read, as I said, Fever Dream by her, which was her like novel, and I didn't love it per se, but I think the weirdness is where it really stands out. She's really good at writing weird things. And so I'm just excited to continue and read the other 4 stories, and I'll update as I go. Okay, I just finished 7 Empty Houses, and I definitely enjoyed it, but I'd also say it was a mixed bag for me. There were definitely some stories that did not exactly hit for me, but I did really enjoy the ones that I enjoyed, and even the ones that I may not have loved. They were short enough that it didn't really affect the reading experience for me, and also none of them were actually bad. There were just some that I liked less than others. But first I want to talk about the other 4 stories that I've read since I last checked in. So the 4th one is definitely the longest one, And sorry, I'm just checking what it's called, so it's more helpful than just saying the fourth one. So the fourth one is called Breath from the Depths, and it is by far the longest one in the collection. And it was also my favorite. We follow this woman who is kind of aging, and she has this thing where she wants to pack up everything in her life. And the world around her, or at least stuff, is slowly deteriorating in her life, her body, her mind, and it's just kind of following that. And it's very weird. It feels very supernatural, and it's really depressing in a lot of ways. I feel like there's like a kind of a twist, as there are in a lot of these stories, and I'm not sure that the twist was exactly super surprising. I wasn't expecting it, but it wasn't like shocking. But I just think it was so well written, and I definitely liked the longer form of this one. I thought it was really interesting. And I just thought also the ending of this one was probably my favorite. And then the other three stories, the first one, well, the fifth one, I guess, was called 2 Square Feet. And I didn't really love this one. It's about this woman who goes out to the pharmacy late at night, and she kind of has a weird experience. And it was fine. It just wasn't really my cup of tea. Then we had An Unlucky Man. This one was kind of creepy, very creepy, honestly. And it's about this family who goes to the hospital for one of the children. Well, it's the other child's birthday, and there's like a weird situation that happens there. I'm being very vague intentionally, but I did not like this one. It was very strange. And then the last one was called Out, and it's about this woman who leaves her house, leaves her apartment during a fight, and just goes and walks around and goes on a little adventure, I'll just say. And I liked this one more than I liked the previous two, but still was not exactly my favorite. So I'd say generally in this collection, I liked the first 4 more than I liked the last 3. And I definitely, if I said like my actual favorites, were probably 1, 2, and 4. And then I thought 3 and 5 were, 3 and 7. This is getting confusing with the numbers, but 3 and 7 were just okay. And then 5 and 6 were kind of iffy for me. But I'm giving it 3 stars because I still really enjoyed what I did really enjoy. And as I said, like, nothing was really bad. There were just some that didn't hit me as hard, and that's probably my fault, not the actual short story collection's fault. So I'm gonna now go, Either Or is still not available from the library, but I'm gonna take a break from reading for a little bit. So hopefully it'll become available. If not, my plans will change, and I will pick probably another book to read based on another album, and I will check in if that happens. Otherwise, I'll check in when I'm some part of the way through Either Or, whenever that is. So I will see you then. Okay, so I actually luckily was able to get Either Or from the library. It was finally available. It did not take long at all. And so I started reading it. I'm about, I want to say, 100-ish pages in, and I'm really enjoying it. I think this is definitely the right time for me to be reading it, and I'm kind of remembering what I did like so much about kind of the first book, The Idiot, and it's really transferred over to this book, everything I liked about it. And it's kind of making me want to reread The Idiot just because I feel like I'd get a lot more out of it now. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to read this one. But basically we're following the main character. It's a continuation from the first book, but she's in her sophomore year of college at Harvard. She's trying to figure out a lot of stuff that happened in the first book. And it's just, I think, a really funny book. The main character has a very distinct voice and very distinct observations about the world. She's very funny, and the way it's written is just very observational and very interesting. And also what I am liking a lot is the school setting, and I think that's something that we got a lot in the first half of The Idiot, and then we kind of moved away from that, and I'm not sure how I felt about that at the time. But right now we're at the school, and she's kind of going to classes and interacting with people there, and I'm just really enjoying that atmosphere a lot. And I think another thing I'm really enjoying is the literary references. The main character really likes to read. She reads a lot of books, and a lot of them, obviously, the author chose books that relate to what's going on in the characters' lives, and the main character recognizes this, and so kind of getting to see those connections between the story in the book and these different books that she's reading is just really cool. And I just think it's a book that makes you think a lot. It's not something I think I could ever like passively read. I feel like I really have to be focused while reading it, but I think that's a good thing, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'll definitely probably finish this pretty fast because I'm really enjoying it. And I will check in when I either have something else to say, or I'll just check in when I finish the book, and I will see you then. Okay, I finished Either Or, and I absolutely loved it. It really ended up going much better than I expected. Going into it, I really just was not sure how much I was gonna like it, considering I really did have mixed thoughts on the first one, but I'd really, after loving this so much, be interested in going back and rereading The Idiot at some point, because this kind of had the same pacing, the same really slow, character-driven storytelling that The Idiot definitely also had, but I still enjoyed it. So I think it really probably was just the wrong time for me to be reading The Idiot, and I feel like I'd like it a lot more if I went back and read it now, especially because I don't remember a lot of it, but I just think that the writing is incredible, and it really is about the main character, Salem. She's such a clear and well-defined character. You spend all this time inside her mind, and you really feel a deep connection and understanding for her. And even though this story basically has no plot, if we're being honest, except for like the last quarter, we're just at this school, Harvard. We're at Harvard. We're watching her kind of interact with people, talk about books, talk about her classes, talk about her observations, and that's mostly it. There's not a lot going on. The last quarter takes place over the summer, and she does end up going abroad and doing a few things, but it's really not the main focus. The small amount of actual events that happen are only to build upon her character and kind of realize her potential as a character. And I just think that it's so well done. She's probably one of the most memorable characters I'll ever read. She's just so distinct, I think. I've never read anyone, even remotely like her, with the same kind of observational writing, the same really witty and just really funny. She's really funny, remarks about the world around her, and just a very memorable book in general, even if I probably will not remember specific plot details for a while, I will definitely always remember this character and the time I got to spend with her. And I think there is a third book coming out at some point, and I'm really, really excited for that because this was really good. I think I'd give it like 4.5, 4 stars, and very excited to read what comes next if there is something. So overall, this vlog definitely went very well. I mean, much better than I expected, considering it was pretty random. I mean, all of these books were on my TBR and were things that I had been wanting to read, but it was just kind of randomly picked based on these albums, and ended up very successfully. I think just a good variety of things. Nothing was even remotely similar, and I got to read a lot of different genres, read a lot of different things that I don't know otherwise when I would have read them, and kind of have this as motivation to read them, which was good. And even the technical least favorite of the vlog, 7 Empty Houses, I still enjoyed a lot of. I still feel like I got a lot out of it. And obviously I loved In the Dream House so much. That's going to stick with me forever. And Either Or it was so good to be able to read this book, and actually enjoy it this time. So this definitely went really well, and I'll probably end up doing it again with some other albums in the future, just because it was really fun and it ended up working out well, as I just said. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you want. I try to post videos once a week. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but I will see you in the next one.